Hey, welcome to Hannity. And tonight, the liberal mainstream media was so wrong and so misleading about President-elect Donald Trump and the election. Now, their biased reporting and their blatant disregard for the truth has now created this all-out anarchy from what I call the alt-radical left. Now, anti-democratic protesters are taking to the streets to carry out nationwide protests, while their leaders, well, they stay silent. President Obama, Hillary Clinton, billionaire George Soros, and other liberal leaders, they haven't said a thing to stop this out-of-control behavior. Now, their silence, it shouldn't come as a surprise. Why? Because Obama and Clinton and Soros for months now have worked to create and push false narratives about Donald Trump to try and scare you, the American voter. And what we're seeing now is what they purposely, in many ways, I argue, created. Remember, it wasn't too long ago when President Obama was saying all of this about Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to be commander-in-chief. We cannot elect a president who vilifies minorities, who mocks Americans with disabilities, who calls immigrants criminals and rapists. So Donald Trump is uniquely unqualified to hold this job.
Actually, you were uniquely unqualified for the job. Now, you also have people like outgoing Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid saying things like this about Donald Trump's election. Quote, white nationalists Vladimir Putin and ISIS, they're celebrating Donald Trump's victory, while innocent, law-abiding Americans are racked with fear, especially African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Muslim Americans, LGBT Americans, and Asian Americans. Now, the leaders of the alt-radical left, as I call them, they've also stood by and applauded factions of this extreme movement. For example, they have embraced Black Lives Matter. Now, you may remember the group that repeatedly encouraged violence against our police officers. Remember them chanting, "What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now. Pigs in a blanket. Fry them like bacon." Now, instead of condemning Black Lives Matter, both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party embraced this group and their rhetoric. And Obama and Clinton, remember, they met with leaders of this group and openly praised them. The president invited them to the Oval Office. So let's be clear tonight. If we're going to talk about the people who are protesting Donald Trump, well, then we need to expose who is responsible for their behavior. Now, the outrage that we now see against President-elect Donald Trump and his supporters, this is getting dangerous and extremely scary. Twitter tonight and over the weekend and since the election has been flooded with violent threats against Donald Trump and his family. We're also seeing Trump supporters. They're coming under attack. Now, according to the Chicago Tribune, just one day after the election, there was a man in the Windy City who was viciously beaten by an angry mob after getting in a traffic incident because they assumed he was a Trump supporter. And we've got to warn you, this video is beyond disturbing. Take a look.
Don't vote Trump. Don't vote Trump.
Unbelievable. Now, the Chicago Tribune also reported that the man did, in fact, vote for Mr. Trump, but that he never told the attackers about it, so they just assumed he was a Trump supporter. Now, could you imagine if that happened to a person who voted for Hillary Clinton? Democrats, the media, they would be up in arms. It would be on the front page of every single newspaper all over the country, all over TV. But because the man pulled the lever for Trump, well, they don't seem to care. And if you think this is bad, I have news for you tonight, America. It's only going to get worse. I wish I was wrong. Now, according to Politico, George Soros and other super-rich liberals that donated to Hillary Clinton are now meeting to come up with a plan to fight back and try and stop Donald Trump. Now, to be the abusively biased liberal mainstream media, well, that's the New York Times, perhaps the most anti-Trump media outlet around. They're now trying to apologize to their readers after being so wrong, quote, after such an erratic and unpredictable election, there are inevitable questions. Did Donald Trump's sheer unconventionality, and did that lead us to other news outlets to underestimate his support among American voters? Now, the Times, CNN, and the rest of the liberal media, well, they can apologize all they want, but guess what? They're the ones going back to, before Trump decided to run, they were the ones that saying this is an impossibility. They got it wrong from the get-go. Watch this.
Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I just assumed he was running as a joke.
Do it. Look at me. Do it. I will personally personally write you a campaign check now on behalf of this country, which does not want you to be president, but which badly wants you to run.
This man has got some momentum, and we better be ready for the fact that he might be leading the Republican ticket next.
I know you don't believe that, but I want to go on.
Sorry to laugh. Mr. Trump, to answer your call for political honesty, I just want to say you're not going to be president, all right? It's been fun.
President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States! Exclamation point at real Donald Trump. Well, at real Donald Trump, at least I will go down as a president.
Yeah, so will Donald Trump. Now, we also can't forget how WikiLeaks, how they exposed rampant collusion between the media and Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. Now, the abusively biased press, well, they have created what I call an informational crisis here in America. And in doing so, by the way, they did you, the American people, a great disservice. Now, back in 2008, right here on this program, I said journalism was dead. Now, because of the free press and the pass they gave Barack Obama. But this election, we found out it's far worse than we ever could have imagined. We now know that the interim DNC chairwoman, Donna Brazile, while working for CNN, well, she was giving the Clinton campaign multiple debate questions. CNN asked the DNC, hey, what questions should we ask Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Carly Fiorina during their interviews? Really? Asking the DNC for the questions? Reporters, well, they asked the Clinton campaign for approval before publishing their stories. I wish they'd do that to me. They never give me that opportunity. So-called journalists allowed to campaign to edit quotes. Pretty amazing. CNBC's John Harwood, see right there? Well, he was offering campaign advice, bragging about going after Trump in a debate that he actually moderated. And to top it all off, WikiLeaks exposed how dozens of journalists from every major organization except the Fox News Channel were invited to eat dinner at Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's house. You have Jeff Zucker's stenographer, you know that little pipsqueak, Brian Stelter over at CNN, obsessed. He's a stalker of the Fox News Channel. Well, he actually said this weekend it was time for the media to do some soul searching. Hey, Brian, that's a great idea. You can start right there at CNN. Now, putting all of this aside for now, 1 week ago, I gave you my closing arguments about this most pivotal election, and you, the American people, you cut through the clutter and you came through because you want to save your country. The media, the pollsters, the politicians, the global elites, they never saw what you saw, what I saw, and that's Donald Trump's potential, his sweeping victory that was coming. But you saw it, and you know why you saw it? Because there was so much at stake. Now, the president-elect, Donald Trump, he needs to avoid what's coming. That's being pressured by the Washington establishment. He's got to always remember, this is my advice for Mr. Trump, always remember, it's the American people that put you in office. And that's why I would like the president-elect and what I want him to do, and I think we're going to have to hold him accountable. He made many promises during this campaign. My advice, Mr. Trump, keep your promises. Donald Trump's agenda is very straightforward. To succeed, I argue, all he has to do is follow through on the agenda. Repealing, replacing Obamacare with free market ideas and solutions like healthcare savings accounts. Why? To lower costs and give you, the American people, real choice. Lowering taxes. Smart idea. Half of the American people won't pay federal income taxes under Donald Trump's plan. Cut personal income and cut corporate taxes. Why? To make America more competitive with the rest of the world. I talked about repatriating corporate profits. Allow these companies to bring back the trillions of dollars that are being held overseas. Offer that 10% low rate in exchange for investment and job creation. By the way, I have an addition to Donald Trump's proposal. If he's going to allow this money back in, he's going to give us a corporate tax rate of 15%, allow the repatriated money back in at 10%. I say go one step further. Any company that will bring millions of dollars and specifically invest in states and cities like Ohio, Milwaukee, Detroit, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, you know what? Incentivize them. Give them 7.5% a repatriation rate. Let's get those jobs flowing immediately if possible. Also, Donald Trump promised a border wall, stop illegal immigration, and to stop illegals from driving down the wages and competing for the few jobs that are available. He promised to appoint originalist justices to the Supreme Court, people like Scalia and Clarence Thomas, who believe in the Constitution, co-equal branches of government, separation of powers. He also talked about a New Deal for Black America, fixing our inner cities. I would say President-elect Trump, he needs to enact this New Deal with African Americans to help end crime, create jobs, fight poverty and despair, and give these kids the education they deserve. Energy independence, to me, is very, very important. Open up drilling and fracking, approve the Keystone XL pipeline, cut regulations on all of these issues. And one of the more important things, drain the swamp, shrink government, slash wasteful government spending, put in term limits for Congress, address our massive national debt, identify our enemies for who they are. Say the words radical Islam, which I know you probably will. We need to start vetting refugees. I support the idea of safe zones, but we got to stop the flow of refugees and migrants from countries, especially those that have radical views that are the antithesis of our constitutional values. One of the more important things that doesn't get a lot of discussion, send education back to the states. End Common Core, top down, federal government regulated education. Let local communities, towns and cities and states decide. Now, I would start with the inner cities first. Why? We have abandoned and hurt minority Americans. They have been disproportionately impacted more than anybody else, especially with the bad educational system. Last point, negotiating free and fair trade. No more cutting deals that negatively impact American workers and causes job losses here at home. And the last thing, to me, this election was about the forgotten man. And if you create millions of jobs in places that put you in power, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, where industry is left and it have decimated entire cities, to me, that's what the next 4 years need to be about. We will, on this program, hold Donald Trump accountable to those promises. And if he gets the job done, I believe we'll be a better country. If he doesn't, we'll be a loud voice of opposition. Now we have more on the mainstream media's biased election coverage. Joe Concha, Monica Crowley, they're next, and also later tonight.
If anyone thinks that I'm going to be the only one that's going to walk in to that office and say, this is what you have to do, I think in a lot of cases he takes the advice, but he likes to listen to a lot of people, and that's a good thing.
Reince Priebus talking about President-elect Donald Trump. It was just announced this weekend that Priebus will be Trump's chief of staff. Steve Bannon, he will be Mr. Trump's chief strategist and senior counselor. We'll check in with Anthony Scaramucci on Trump's transition team. He'll join us along with Judge Jeanine Pirro and much, much more on this busy Hannity. And welcome back to Hannity. So the alt-radical left, as I call them, is trying to create chaos all over the country. Now, in the last segment, we showed you a video of a man the day after election being brutally beaten in Chicago by an angry mob who thought, what? He was a Trump supporter. Now, instead of condemning his behavior, some members of the alt-radical left are saying this.
What do you say to the people who dragged a poor white guy out of a car and beat him?
Oh my goodness, poor white people, please, stop. I say to people that protest is that, first of all, apparently has never been an acceptable.
Here with reaction from The Hill, Joe Concha, and from the Washington Times, Fox News contributor Monica Crowley. What a double standard. You've got a picture you just showed me. This is amazing.
My favorite prop.
This is your show this prop. Let's pan in hard on this.
So a little context.
After the election, it says, how will Trump followers react if they think it's stolen?
Right.
You got burning cities, anger, fury. By the way, all white people.
AR-15s are in there also, Sean. So
yeah, exactly.
AR-15s. So that's from the Week magazine, and they never considered that what happens if Trump wins and how will Clinton supporters react. That looks a lot like Portland to me. Right now.
Right.
But instead, and if you know that if this were the case where Trump supporters were protesting, that obviously we wouldn't be trying to explore their feelings and give them national platforms to talk about their anxiety and their fear. They would be dismissed as racist, xenophobic,
and kids at school wouldn't be told, we've got to work with your feelings. It'll be okay.
It would be a slightly different narrative.
Yeah, a little counseling time.
You know what we've learned over the last 8 years of President Obama's presidency is that there is a professional left and there are professional protesters that are funded and orchestrated and organized by the professional left, including people like George Soros, that funds this. But what we also know, Sean, is that for 8 years, these protests that you're seeing now, which are fizzling out, What we know is that when the radical left has the president and the presidency and the White House, it amplifies their sense of importance, it amplifies their size, it amplifies their megaphone because they have the president backing them up and supporting them. Now that this leftist president is on his way out, that's why these protests are falling apart. They're still organized, they're still out there, they're still getting media attention. But with this president, you know, one foot on the banana peel, they are not having the effect that they did when their chief sponsor was sitting in the Oval Office.
I spent, Joe, a lot of time in my opening monologue tonight talking about the media and how wrong they have been. So I call it the alt-radical left media. I've said journalism's dead. So you've got Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. In the case of Obama, he's invited the alt-radical left. Move On, Occupy Wall Street. Black Lives Matter had FaceTime with the President of the United States, people that were chanting, what do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now? And pigs in a blanket fry them like bacon. Now, are they not guilty of the very thing they're accusing Trump of, embracing the most radical elements, Hillary seeking Black Lives Matter support?
Well, I think you won't have to worry about that come January 20th. That's one thing that you can take solace in. I look at more the media angle of all this, Sean, and here's what you need to know. A guy named Reed Wilson, he works for The Hill. He compiled all the major endorsements that Hillary Clinton got. Out of 59 papers, Hillary Clinton got 57 endorsements. Donald Trump, 2. You know what those endorsements got Hillary Clinton? A concession speech. So this shows you that the influence of the media is now a fraction of what it used to be, because if people listened to what they were saying, Donald Trump loses by 20 points.
Who's going to hold CNN feeding questions to Hillary to help her cheat, or colluding with the DNC in what questions they should ask Donald Trump? Who's going to hold the New York Times or Politico allowing editor privilege for the candidate? You know, who's going to hold John Harwood of CNBC?
I'll tell you who.
Who?
The American consumer, the viewer.
They already did?
Because if you can see it in the ratings, and when the ratings go down, revenue goes down. So, number one, I think the corporate parents of these organizations should be holding their networks responsible, okay? So it should go further than the chairman of these networks. It should go up to the corporate heads. They should be answering for this. But you can also vote with your remote control, and you can vote with your subscriptions.
Right.
You see the New York Times falling apart.
Yeah,
of course,
exactly.
Sean, at 10.
No, but there's a cabal. I noticed, for example, you're kind of a lone wolf. There's the pipsqueak, you know, Jeff Zucker stenographer, this kid, Brian Stelter, right? He lives in Jeff Zucker's office, I'm told. And him and Dylan Byers, they don't report on their own network. They are Fox obsessed. They're stalkers in many ways. If there's one little thing they don't like on Fox, or Hannity's not a journalist and he has a show, hello, I've been here 21 years. Shocking revelation. Fox News alert. But yet they don't report on their own networks and their own collusion and their own corruption that has been so manifest, so many examples in this campaign. How do we ever trust these people again, or should we never?
Well, if you look at trust in media, 6%, Associated Press study in April, 6% of the American public has a high confidence in the media.
Is that why you purposely avoid that relationship that exists on Twitter and everything else with the group, the cabal of all the media people?
That's a different kind of a elite crowd. I repurpose my dinner table when I have parties to play beer pong. All right, I'm a different kind of guy. Look,
by the way, me and Monaco fit in great. You know,
this isn't just my opinion as far as is there media bias. Yeah. You know, some media reporters, elite media reporters, will say, you know, only some Americans believe that. USA Today poll, this is all you need to know. They asked, who do you think, 1,000 likely voters, not Republicans, Democrats, 1,000 likely voters, who do you think the media is rooting for in this election? By a 10-to-1 margin, they said Hillary Clinton.
All right, guys, thank you both. And thanks for being a fair guy. I know you're much more fair than the other people in your business.
Let's put it this way. I voted for a Clinton, and I voted for a Bush in my lifetime.
Oh, isn't that nice? Sorry to hear that. Clinton vote. All right. And coming up next tonight on Hannity.
If anyone thinks that I'm the only one that's going to walk in to that office and say, this is what you have to do, I think in a lot of cases he takes the advice, but he likes to listen to a lot of people, and that's a good thing.
Reince Priebus has been tapped to be President-elect Donald Trump's chief of staff. Steve Bannon named chief strategist and senior counselor. Anthony Scaramucci, Judge Jeanine Pirro, they'll weigh in, and also tonight.
Democrats, Republicans, independents said, we want a change in this country. And Donald Trump represented that change. And he did so in a way that just shocked the world. And the other thing about President-elect Trump, and everyone understands it who knows him, he listens to a lot of people. If anyone thinks that I'm the only one that's going to walk in to that office and say, this is what you have to do, I think in a lot of cases he takes the advice, but he likes to listen to a lot of people, and that's a good thing. That's what you want from a president.
That was Reince Priebus earlier today on Fox and Friends. It was just announced this weekend that he will be President-elect Donald Trump's chief of staff. But that was not the only big appointment this weekend. Steve Bannon will serve as Mr. Trump's chief strategist and senior counselor. Now, Mr. Trump has many more positions to fill before taking office in January. And some big announcements, well, they could be coming this week. Joining us now to go over what we can expect in the coming days, the author of Hopping Over the Rabbit Hole. By the way, a best-selling book in one day. He's a Trump transition team executive committee member. Our friend Anthony Scaramucci, the host of Justice, Judge Jeanine Pirro. All right, both of you, by the way, I know for a fact, are being considered for positions. But that's not what I'm going to ask you about tonight. I'll leave that up to you guys. I have known Reince and Steve Bannon both for a long time. The media, I just did a long monologue, how the media is corrupt and how wrong they got this. And what did they do today? They start feeding more false information. Who was Steve Bannon's best friend? Andrew Breitbart. He ran Breitbart. He was working with Andrew to launch Breitbart. Also Larry O'Connor, who I know was raised Jewish. Andrew was. So I guess an ex-wife, whatever, makes this claim. And look at what the alt-left radical media is doing yet again. They learn nothing from their mistakes in this campaign, and they're attacking Steve Bannon as something that I know that he's not. David Horowitz knows that he's not, and anybody that has...
Oh, I know he's not. I work with him very closely on the campaign. He's a brilliant strategist.
Right.
He's a very fair guy, and I'll tell you what, he had a great influence on this campaign throughout, which is why President-elect Trump is bringing him to the White House.
And by the way, his background, I was a senior partner, I guess, or executive at Goldman Sachs. I mean, he has a background. Everyone just thinks Breitbart.
Well, not only that, he's a military officer.
That too.
He's a Harvard graduate.
Yeah.
He's a man who has...
By the way, look at Anthony. Anthony's a Harvard grad.
Oh, I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that. Anyway, but this guy, Bannon, has done wonderful things for Donald Trump. He brought everyone together in that Trump campaign, and he delivered a victory along with a lot of other people for Donald Trump. He will do the same for the American people. He will be able to deliver the big ideas that Donald Trump talked about.
That's the challenge.
That got Donald Trump elected. And you know what? All of this left-wing coordinated effort on their part
Smear,
to destroy
slander.
him
By the way,
is pathetic.
Just like they tried to do to Donald himself.
Exactly.
Yeah, no question. But I just want to say two things about Reince Priebus. Okay, this guy stood in the foxhole.
He did.
Oh, yeah.
He had a he should be Secretary of State, wink, wink, because he had 17 nation states they had to deal with before Mr. Trump became the nominee.
Let me say this, because
he's a brilliant guy.
They
and
treated
he's very
him
well loved.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, all these people that didn't keep their campaign pledge, that were running for president, all of these people, you know, he kept his word. And he fought. He was in the trenches for Donald Trump.
That ground game, Sean. Okay, at the end of the day,
he built it.
Mr. Trump said in a lot of these events, we'll know if you're secretariat if we win, and we can take the rose bouquet and put it around you. And on Wednesday morning, boy, were we able to do that. And so I am thrilled for Reince and thrilled for Steve. But again, like Governor Pence, Sean, he's picking great people. I mean, think about the 3 picks that Mr. Trump,
think about this.
President-elect Trump has picked. It's extraordinary.
Since Obama became president, this is worth noting. You know, we've picked up 13 Senate seats the Republicans have, 64 House seats, 14 governorships, 30 state houses. You know, seriously? The greatest gift to the Republican Party, and this probably that paved the way, was his failure and the forgotten men and women of this country that have suffered.
And isn't it interesting that Bannon's whole theme was about the forgotten man? And in 2010, 2014, 2016, everybody lost. It was a Democrat with Obama.
I bought a a painting called The Forgotten Man.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did.
I didn't know.
It's on my website, Hannity.com.
Now, Amity Schlaze wrote a great book called The Forgotten Man about the Depression. And so what's interesting about the alt-left, just to add this to it, they're not focused on these people. They think these people are misogynists and misanthropes and they're negative people. All they are is faith-based people that want an aspirational opportunity for their family members. And they came out in real strong
Steve's really
numbers.
bright. Steve never wavered. I would talk to Steve. I talked to Kellyanne. I talked to Rice. I talked to everybody, as I know both of you did. They never wavered. They always believed they would win.
And you know
No
what?
doubt.
But I said in my open last night, and you know what? It's about time we're now going to be able to actually cling to God, our guns, and religion.
our Bibles?
Too bad.
Wow. Very good. Good to see you both. And
I want you on my team with your gun, though, Jeanine. That's for sure.
Uh-oh, here we go. All right, coming up next tonight on this busy news night on Hannity. President-elect Donald Trump speaking to 60 Minutes about his plans to deport illegal immigrants, criminal aliens, those that committed crimes in U.S. cities and small towns. Mercedes Schlapp, Charlie Hurt, they're up next. And later, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Rick Grinnell weigh in on Trump's strategy. How does he defeat ISIS and protect the homeland? Straight ahead. While Chicago Mayor Rambo Deadfish Emanuel, well, he's vowing that his city will always be a sanctuary city. So how fast can Donald Trump implement his immigration agenda? And what will it mean for sanctuary cities across America, cities that defy the rule of law? Here with analysis, Fox News contributors Mercedes Schlapp and Charlie Hurt. Mercedes, what they're saying is they don't care what the law is. They are going to violate the law. Now, why do I believe if Hillary was president and I came on TV and I said, I'm going to violate the law, that I would have people with guns, probably people I like because I love law enforcement, come by and they'd handcuff me and maybe even perp walk me in front of the cameras and mugshot me and take mugshots of me and I would be made an example of. And it would take you and Charlie baking a cake with a file in it to maybe get me out before 10 years my sentence. Why do they think they can violate the law?
Let me tell you, Sean, if you would ever end up in jail, Charlie and I would be the first ones out there protesting to get you out, okay?
Yeah, that's going to work. My two favorite people.
So here's the deal. With sanctuary cities, it's just toxic to our immigration system. A reason being is that we know that after 9/11, they pushed forward the secure communities, which is where FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the local law enforcement would work together to basically make sure that they can identify criminal illegal aliens. Remember that many of these hijackers of 9/11 were actually illegal aliens. So this is an opportunity to keep Americans safe. And the idea that these mayors and these local leaders in some of these key liberal cities have decided that they're going to still keep moving forward on the sanctuary cities, you know, it's going to be troublesome because with Donald Trump as president, he's going to ensure that we end that practice. And guess what? Those cities will not be receiving federal law enforcement grants if they don't participate and really cooperate
That's a great
with the federal
idea.
government.
It's called a financial incentive. You know, most people agree, Charlie, that just rescinding a lot of executive orders that basically means Obama didn't want to abide by the law that were passed by previous presidents, that would bring us almost all the way there. There's not a whole lot that he really needs to go to Congress about as it relates to this specific issue, right? Criminal aliens?
All of those workarounds that President Obama did because he knew that Congress, even though he had 2 years of a full Democratic Congress, he couldn't get these crazy ideas through. So you're right. Those things get wiped away with the stroke of a pen. But on the sanctuary cities in particular, I mean, bring that fight on. I mean, that is for Donald Trump and for Republicans, if they hold fast, that is a fantastic argument for them because that is a no-brainer anywhere in the country. And I would actually argue that it actually, you know, the people that are proponents of these sanctuary cities are not only are they undermining the American will and the rule of law, but they're also setting off a terrible message for people around the world. It's anti-immigrant is what it is, because what it does is it draws people from all over South America here thinking that we don't enforce our laws. And then what happens when, you know, suddenly we do start enforcing our laws?
What about the amnesty crowd in D.C.? Paul Ryan quoted as saying there's no deportation force, but Donald Trump is saying we have 2 to 3 million criminal aliens in the country. I would think every American agrees that if not only you didn't respect our laws and sovereignty, but then you committed crimes, in some cases even violent crimes, you ought to go. Those are not people that want a better life.
Right. And it's a no-brainer, Sean. I mean, the mere fact is that we know that ICE last year in 2015 released 20,000 criminal aliens into our society. The fact that over close to 9,000 of those actually were convicted of violent crimes. These are individuals who do not deserve to be in our land, in our nation. They need to be deported. No question. And not even their home countries want them back. So it becomes quite a challenge. And then, so I think for Donald Trump to take on this fight, I think is incredibly important for the sake of enforcing our immigration laws and ensuring that at the end of the day, the American citizen is protected.
And Charlie, and he said it last night, he said, as it relates to the other people, we'll have a discussion after the wall is built and the borders are secure. I think it's the right priority.
Donald Trump understands this issue better than any Republican politician that we've had in the past 10 or 15 years.
So what if they oppose him? What if they give him a hard time?
Well, here's what I think happens. First of all, he understands you take the toughest position that you can take, which is build the wall, deport them all, and then once you secure the border and you end the flow, then you can kind of sort of negotiate about other things, but we must deport those people who are breaking the law over and beyond just being here illegally. Those people have to go, and then slowly that group of people gets smaller and smaller, and are Americans, are Trump supporters going to be outraged if some of these people that don't get deported, who have been contributing citizens other than having broken the law to be here? I think that people give them a lot of leeway if you fix these other parts of the problem, and Republicans have never stuck with that.
All right, I got to run, guys. Thank you both. And interesting times ahead. I will tell you, there's going to be a lot of fights. And in short order, as we can see, the left will be doing everything they can do to undermine him. And it's going to be a battle like we've probably never seen before. Good to see you both. Thank you. And when we come back, President-elect Donald Trump, he won't discuss his plans to destroy ISIS. He thinks that's stupid. He doesn't want to give anything away to America's enemies. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Rick Grinnell, they're here to weigh in tonight. Straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. So last night, during his sit-down interview with 60 Minutes, President-elect Donald Trump was asked about his plans to defeat ISIS. Does Donald Trump have a point? Also, earlier today, Senator Jeanine Ernst of Iowa wrote a letter to President Obama declaring, quote, ISIS and its sympathizers are growing more overt in Latin America. How can President-elect Donald Trump stop this growing threat for all of us? Here with reaction, former spokesman for the U.S. ambassador to the UN and Fox News contributor Rick Grinnell, also the author of Defeating Jihad, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. I would recommend both of you to work in some national security capacity for President-elect Trump, and I know you both. Why are you smiling, Rick? What's that smile about?
I love your confidence in me, Sean. That's what I love.
But both of you are being talked about. Would you like that position, Dr. Gorka? Which position would you like?
I would take any position that they would offer me in national security, because it would not only be an honor, it would be a duty to serve Mr. Trump.
You know, you have been one of the most outspoken voices that understands defeating jihad. You wrote the book, The Winnable War. You wrote the book. You taught at Marine Corps University. You understand warfare. This enemy is getting mightier and stronger. True?
Absolutely. Look at what the Obama administration said just 2 months ago. President Obama had his ISIS powwow in the Pentagon. The National Counterterrorism Center briefed him. That's the highest intelligence body on terrorism alone. They told him, and I quote directly because it leaked to the press, there are now fully operational ISIS affiliates in 18 nations. Problem with that, Sean, 2 years ago, that number was 7. They have more than doubled in 2 years.
Have you spoken directly to President-elect Trump?
I advised him. We talked national security several occasions last year, and this morning I was in Trump Tower, not with him, but with other people who are working national security.
Rick, what position, I mean, you have great credentials as well. What would you like to do if you had the chance? Because I know you're under consideration.
Look, you know, I have to be honest with you. There's so much work to be done, and I'm ecstatic about President-elect Trump. Whatever he says that he wants people to do, I think everybody's going to jump to help him. He has got an enormous task. I mean, you think about what's happening already in the Obama administration. I already hear President Obama talking like the next president is going to defeat ISIS. You know what that means, Sean? It means that for the next 2.5 months, ISIS hears, We can do anything we want because for 2.5 months while President Obama is still the president, he's not going to take us out. That makes me angry. President Obama still, I don't want to just say that the next president has to crush ISIS. This is a daily problem. We need to still go after them now. President Obama needs to put away the political thinking and get accurate intelligence so that we can crush the command and control center of ISIS today, not on January 21st, 22nd, 23rd.
Dr. Gorka, I'll throw this to you. What about the 1,000 FBI, Homeland Security investigations going on in the country today? ISIS sympathizers in all 50 states. Shouldn't that be at the top of the list that we think we have people here?
Let's talk not just about leads. We've got 1,000 leads. That could pan out to whatever. We have arrested or killed 124 ISIS terrorists on U.S. territory in just 2.5 years. That's insane. Not 24. Not 34, 124, and that's just ISIS. That's not Al-Qaeda. That's just ISIS, Sean.
Yeah, but part of extreme vetting or not allowing, what I don't understand, I like Syrian safe zones because people that are victims of a civil war, we can provide food, medicine, clothing, supplies, beds, and security, whatever they need. I like that, but how do we invite people into a country when they grew up in a country where men get to tell women how to dress, they can't drive, they kill gays and lesbians, and Christians and Jews are persecuted? How do we, it contradicts our own constitutional values.
Sean, this is why Brexit happened. This is why the Trump train happened. It's the end of political correctness and insanity. Let me quote to you a Muslim chief of police from the biggest refugee camp in Jordan. I visited there with my family Christmas Day last year, when he tells me as a Muslim, look, we're going to help these guys. I'm a Muslim, they're a Muslim. But you know what the long-term solution is? They go home.
Right.
We don't want to keep them here in Jordan. And the idea that they go, he said, the idea that they go further west
is crazy.
That's insanity.
Yeah. Rick, what do you think?
Can I add one thing to this?
Yes, sir.